The woman I married is the strongest person I have ever known, but that strength did not come from nowhere. It was forged in the fires of a childhood that would have broken most people. Her own father refused to feed her, so she learned to feed herself. And now, after all these years, his new wife has shown up at our door with a demand that left us both speechless. Before I share this story, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe if you have not already. Now let me take you back to where it all began, so you can understand why what happened last month shook us both to the core. Camilla grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everybody knew everybody, and front porches were made for lemonade and long conversations. Her mother, Linda, worked as a night shift nurse at the local hospital. The hours were brutal, but Linda never let that stop her from being present for her daughter. Every single morning, no matter how tired she was, Linda would wake up early to make breakfast for Camilla before school. The kitchen would fill with the smell of butter melting on a hot griddle, the sweet aroma of maple syrup warming on the stove. Those mornings were sacred. Camilla told me that some of her happiest memories live in that tiny kitchen standing on a step stool next to her mother, learning how to flip pancakes without making a mess. She was only 7 years old when Linda first put a spatula in her hand and said, "Sweetheart, cooking is love made visible. Never forget that." Her father, Richard, was a traveling salesman who spent more time on the road than at home. When he was around, he was distant, always preoccupied with work calls or paperwork. But it did not matter much back then because Linda filled the house with enough warmth for both parents. Camilla felt safe. She felt loved. She had no idea how quickly that would all be taken away. The accident happened on a cold November night when Camilla was 11 years old. Linda was driving home after a double shift, exhausted but eager to get back to her daughter. A drunk driver ran a red light and slammed into the driver's side of her car. Linda died on impact. She never made it home. When the police officers showed up at their door that night, Camilla was waiting up for her mother a plate of cookies she had baked sitting on the kitchen counter. She wanted to surprise Linda with the recipe she had finally perfected on her own. Instead, she watched her father collapse against the doorframe, his face turning gray as the officers delivered the news. Everything changed after the funeral. The warmth that Linda had filled the house with seemed to evaporate overnight. Richard stopped going to work regularly. He started drinking at first, just a glass or two in the evenings, then entire bottles that he would leave empty on the coffee table. He stopped talking to Camilla except to give her short, cold instructions. Take out the trash. Turn off the lights. Stop making so much noise. The father she had known, distant as he was, disappeared completely. In his place was a stranger who looked at her with something she could not quite name. It took her years to realize it was resentment. 3 months after Linda passed away, Camilla noticed that the refrigerator was getting emptier and emptier. At first, she thought her father had just forgotten to go grocery shopping. She tried to remind him a few times, but he would wave her off or ignore her completely. One evening, her stomach growling so loud she was sure the neighbors could hear it, Camilla finally worked up the courage to ask her father directly about dinner. Richard was sitting in his recliner, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the side table, staring blankly at the television. "Dad," she said quietly, "there is no food in the house." "What are we going to eat for dinner?" He did not even look at her. His eyes stayed fixed on the screen as he took another sip from his glass. "You are old enough to figure it out yourself," he said, his voice flat and cold. "I am not your maid." Camilla stood there frozen. She was 11 years old. She did not understand what she had done wrong. She did not understand why her father was treating her like a burden instead of his daughter. "But Dad," she tried again, her voice trembling, "I do not know how to—" "Your mother spoiled you," he interrupted, finally turning to look at her. His eyes were bloodshot, his expression hard. "She worked herself to death for you, you know that. All those extra shifts so you could have your little dance classes, and now she is gone. So figure it out." The words hit Camilla like a physical blow. She stumbled back, tears streaming down her face, and ran to her room. That night, she cried herself to sleep on an empty stomach, clutching the apron her mother used to wear in the kitchen. It still smelled faintly of vanilla and cinnamon. It was the last piece of Linda she had left. The next morning, Camilla woke up with a new resolve. If her father would not take care of her, she would take care of herself. She was only 11, but she remembered everything her mother had taught her in that little kitchen. She could make pancakes, scrambled eggs, and simple pasta dishes. The problem was not knowing how to cook. The problem was having nothing to cook with. She searched the kitchen cabinets and found a half bag of rice, some canned vegetables that were past their expiration date, and a few packets of instant oatmeal. It was not much, but it would keep her alive for a few days while she figured out a more permanent solution. That weekend, Camilla walked 2 miles to the nearest grocery store, a family-owned place called Patterson's Market. She had no money, but she had an idea. She marched right up to the counter where an elderly man with kind eyes and a white apron was sorting through receipts. "Excuse me, sir," she said, trying to make her voice sound more confident than she felt. "My name is Camilla, and I was wondering if you have any work I could do. I am a hard worker and I do not need money. Just some food that you were going to throw away anyway." The man, Mr. Patterson, looked at her for a long moment. He saw the worn shoes on her feet, the way her clothes hung a little too loose on her thin frame, the dark circles under her eyes that no child should have. He did not ask questions. He simply nodded. "Tell you what, young lady," he said gently. "You come by after school every day, help me sweep up, stock some shelves, and I will make sure you go home with a bag of groceries. Sound fair?" Camilla's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. "Yes, sir," she said. "That sounds more than fair. Thank you." From that day on, Camilla worked at Patterson's Market every afternoon. Mr. Patterson never treated her like charity. He gave her real responsibilities and praised her when she did good work. He taught her about inventory management, about how to spot produce that was about to go bad, about the importance of treating every customer with respect. And every evening she would walk home with a bag full of food enough to feed herself, and sometimes even to stock the freezer for the weekends. At school, Camilla became an expert at hiding her situation. She never told anyone that her father had essentially abandoned her. She wore the same 3 outfits in rotation, but she kept them clean and pressed. She excelled in her classes, especially math and science, because she understood that education was her only way out. Her teachers saw a bright, quiet girl who always turned in her homework on time. They had no idea she was going home to an empty house where her father might not show up for days at a time. Life at home became a strange sort of routine. Camilla would wake up early, make herself breakfast, pack a lunch for school, and leave before her father was even awake. She would go to schoolwork at Mr. Patterson's store, come home, make dinner, do her homework, and go to bed. Richard came and went like a ghost, sometimes disappearing for a week or more on what he called business trips. When he was home, he spent his time drinking and watching television, barely acknowledging his daughter's existence, except when he was angry. One night, Camilla had made spaghetti with meat sauce using a recipe she had found in one of her mother's old cookbooks. She was actually proud of how it turned out. The sauce had simmered for hours, filling the house with a rich, savory aroma that reminded her of happier times. She made a plate for herself, and hoping to bridge the gap between them, she made one for her father, too. "I made dinner," she announced, setting the plate down on the coffee table in front of him. "It is Mom's recipe. I thought you might—" Richard looked at the plate, then at Camilla. His face twisted into something ugly. "Get that out of my sight," he growled. "It smells like your mother's cooking, and I hate it." Before Camilla could react, he swept his arm across the table, sending the plate crashing to the floor. Spaghetti and sauce splattered across the carpet, the plate shattering into a dozen pieces. "Clean this up," he said, turning back to the television. "And do not ever make that recipe again." Camilla knelt on the floor, picking up the broken pieces of ceramic, her tears mixing with the tomato sauce on the carpet. She understood now. Her father did not just resent her. He hated her. He hated her because she reminded him of Linda, the wife he had lost, the life he would never get back. And somehow, in his broken alcohol-soaked mind, he had decided that it was all her fault. When Camilla was 14, a small light finally broke through the darkness of her life. Her school offered a home economics class, and she signed up thinking it would be an easy credit. What she found instead was Mrs. Thompson, a cooking teacher, who would change the trajectory of her entire future. Mrs. Thompson was a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and a warm smile that made everyone feel welcome in her classroom. She noticed Camilla immediately, not because she was the best student, but because of the way she touched the ingredients, the reverence with which she approached every recipe. After class one day, Mrs. Thompson asked Camilla to stay behind. "You have a gift," she said simply. "Where did you learn to cook like that?" Camilla hesitated, not wanting to reveal too much. "My mother taught me," she finally said, "before she passed away." Mrs. Thompson nodded, her eyes softening with understanding. "Would you like to learn more? I could teach you after school. Advanced techniques, professional methods. No charge." Camilla could hardly believe what she was hearing. "Why would you do that for me?" she asked. Mrs. Thompson smiled. "Because talent like yours deserves to be nurtured, and because I have a feeling you could use something good in your life right now." She did not ask questions about Camilla's home situation. She did not pry or push. She simply offered her time, her knowledge, and her kitchen. For the next 2 years, Camilla spent every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon learning from Mrs. Thompson. She learned how to make French sauces and Italian pastas from scratch. She learned about flavor profiles and plating techniques. She learned that cooking was not just about survival, it was an art form. And for the first time since her mother died, Camilla allowed herself to dream. She would open her own restaurant someday. She would create a place where people felt welcomed and nourished, where every meal was made with the love her mother had taught her to put into food. She would take the pain of her childhood and transform it into something beautiful. Everything changed again when Camilla was 16. Richard came home one day with a woman on his arm and an announcement that stunned Camilla to her core. "This is Sandra," he said, gesturing to the blonde woman standing next to him. "We got married last month. She and her kids are moving in." Camilla stared at them, trying to process what she was hearing. Her father, who could barely stand to be in the same room as her, had gotten married without even telling her. Sandra was younger than Richard by at least 15 years, with perfectly manicured nails and a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. Behind her stood 2 children who looked about as thrilled to be there as Camilla was to see them. Derek was 14, a lanky boy with a permanent scowl on his face. Brittany was 12, with her mother's blonde hair and an expression of bored entitlement that immediately set Camilla on edge. "Nice to meet you," Camilla said politely, extending her hand. Sandra looked at it like it was covered in dirt. "Richard told me you can cook," Sandra said, ignoring the handshake. "That is perfect. The kids are used to having home-cooked meals, and I certainly do not have time for that." Richard nodded enthusiastically, more animated than Camilla had seen him in years. "Finally, you can be useful around here," he said. "Sandra's kids need looking after, and you are the perfect person to do it." Camilla felt her stomach drop. After years of being ignored and neglected, her father had found a new use for her. She was not his daughter. She was hired help. The first week set the tone for what the next 2 years would look like. Camilla was expected to wake up at 5:30 every morning to prepare breakfast for Derek and Brittany before school. The meal had to be ready and on the table by 6:45, hot and fresh, or Sandra would complain to Richard about how lazy and ungrateful his daughter was. After school, while Derek played video games and Brittany scrolled through her phone, Camilla cleaned the entire house. She vacuumed, mopped, dusted, and scrubbed bathrooms. She did everyone's laundry, carefully separating Sandra's delicate fabrics and Derek's sports uniforms and Brittany's designer clothes. She ironed, folded, and put everything away in the proper places. Then came dinner. Sandra had very specific tastes which changed on a daily basis. One day she wanted Italian, the next day she was craving Asian food, the day after that she would demand something keto-friendly because she was watching her carbs. Camilla learned to cook cuisines she had never even heard of, spending her limited free time researching recipes online at the school library, and no matter how hard she tried, it was never good enough. "This chicken is dry," Sandra would say, pushing her plate away with a look of disgust. "The vegetables are overcooked. Honestly, did your mother teach you nothing?" Camilla would apologize. Clear the dishes, wash everything by hand because Sandra claimed the dishwasher left spots, and then retreat to her tiny bedroom in the basement, the space Sandra had decided was more appropriate for someone in Camilla's position. "The guest rooms are for guests," Sandra had explained sweetly. "You understand, do you not?" As if the daily servitude was not enough, Camila soon discovered an even more devastating betrayal. Her mother had left behind a savings account specifically for Camila's college education. Linda had been contributing to it since before Camila was born, and by the time of her death, there was almost $30,000 set aside for her daughter's future. Camila had been counting on that money. It was her way out her ticket to culinary school, her chance at the life she had been dreaming about since Mrs. Thompson first saw her potential. She found out the money was gone when she tried to register for the SAT exam. The registration fee was $47, and Camila needed to access the savings account to pay for it. When she called the bank, they informed her that the account had been emptied 6 months prior, the funds transferred to Richard's personal account. Camila confronted her father that evening, her hands shaking with a mixture of fear and fury. "That money was mine," she said, her voice cracking. "Mom saved it for my future." "How could you take it?" Richard was sprawled on the couch, Sandra next to him, with her feet up, both of them watching some reality television show. He barely glanced at his daughter. "That money was in my name," he said dismissively. "I can do whatever I want with it. Besides, Sandra needed a new car. The old one was not safe for the kids." Camila looked at Sandra, who had the audacity to smirk. "Priorities, sweetie," Sandra said. "Family comes first." Camila wanted to scream. She wanted to ask how she was supposed to be part of this family when she was treated like an outsider, a servant, a burden, but she knew it would not change anything. Richard had made his choice a long time ago, and it was never going to be her. The breaking point came on Camila's 18th birthday. She had not expected anyone to remember. Richard and Sandra certainly had not acknowledged her birthday since they moved in. But some small, foolish part of her had hoped that maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. It was not different. What was different was that Brittany's birthday fell 2 weeks after Camila's, and Sandra had decided to throw her daughter a massive party. The entire extended family was invited along with Brittany's friends from school. Sandra had Camila working for weeks in advance, planning the menu, preparing the decorations, baking the 3-tier cake that Brittany had specifically requested. On the day of the party, Camila spent 12 hours straight in the kitchen. She prepared appetizers, main courses, side dishes, and desserts. She arranged everything beautifully on platters and serving dishes. She worked until her feet ached and her back screamed in protest. No one thanked her. No one even acknowledged that she was doing anything beyond her expected duties. The worst moment came when it was time to bring out the birthday cake. Camila had spent 2 days on that cake, a vanilla masterpiece with buttercream frosting and fresh strawberries, exactly what Brittany had demanded. She carried it carefully from the kitchen, the candles lit and glowing, ready to present it to the birthday girl. She never made it to the table. Brittany, surrounded by her friends, stuck out her foot just as Camila walked past. Camila tripped, stumbled, and went crashing to the ground. The cake flew from her hands and splattered across the floor, 3 tiers of vanilla and buttercream destroyed in an instant. The room erupted in laughter. Brittany's friends pointed and giggled. Sandra let out an exaggerated sigh. "Clumsy as always," she said, shaking her head. "Clean this up, would you? We will just have to order something from the bakery." Camila pushed herself up from the floor, cake smeared across her clothes, frosting in her hair. She looked around the room at all the people laughing at her humiliation. And then her eyes found her father. Richard was standing by the fireplace, a drink in his hand, watching the whole scene. He was laughing too. That was the moment something inside Camila finally broke. But it was not her spirit. It was the last thread of obligation she felt toward these people. She was done. That night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, Camila went down to her basement room and started packing. She did not have much. Some clothes, her mother's old cookbook, a few photographs from before everything went wrong. It all fit into one suitcase and a backpack. She thought about leaving without a word, just disappearing in the middle of the night. But that felt wrong somehow. After everything she had endured, she deserved to have the last word. She sat down at the small desk in her room and wrote a letter to her father. She did not write to Sandra or the kids. They were not worth the paper. But Richard, the man who was supposed to protect her, who was supposed to love her unconditionally, he needed to know exactly what he had lost. "Dad," she wrote, "you refused to feed me, so I learned to feed myself. You refused to love me, so I learned to love myself. You took everything Mom left for me, but you could not take what she taught me. I am leaving and I am never coming back. Goodbye." She placed the letter on the kitchen counter and walked out the front door. She did not look back. Camilla showed up on Mrs. Thompson's doorstep at 2 in the morning, her suitcase in one hand and her mother's cookbook in the other. Mrs. Thompson took one look at her and pulled her inside without a single question. "I will make some tea," she said gently, "and then you will tell me everything. But no matter what happened, you are safe here now." For the first time in years, Camilla let herself cry. Really cry. All the pain she had been holding back, all the anger and grief and loneliness, it all came pouring out as Mrs. Thompson held her on the worn sofa in her living room. Mrs. Thompson let Camilla stay with her for the rest of the school year. She helped her apply for scholarships, writing recommendation letters that spoke of Camilla's extraordinary talent and even more extraordinary resilience. When the acceptance letters came in along with a full scholarship to one of the best culinary schools in the country, Mrs. Thompson was the first person Camilla hugged. "You did this," Camilla said through her tears. "I could never have done this without you." Mrs. Thompson shook her head. "I just opened a door," she said. "You are the one who had the courage to walk through it." Culinary school was everything Camilla had dreamed of and more. She threw herself into her studies with an intensity that amazed her professors. She worked part-time at local restaurants to pay for her expenses, and she excelled in every class she took. She graduated at the top of her class and immediately started working her way up through the restaurant industry. By 25, she was a sous chef at a well-respected establishment. By 27, she was head chef at one of the highest-rated restaurants in the city, and by 28, she had saved enough money to open her own place. She called it Linda's Kitchen after the mother who had first put a spatula in her hand and taught her that cooking was love made visible. The restaurant was an immediate success. Critics praised the innovative menu and the welcoming atmosphere. Regular customers became like family, returning week after week for Camilla's signature dishes. Within 3 years, she had opened 2 additional locations and was featured in national food magazines. She had taken everything her father tried to destroy and turned it into something beautiful. And that is when I entered the picture. I met Camilla at one of her restaurants during a friend's birthday dinner. I was struck immediately by her warmth, her passion for food, and the way she seemed to genuinely care about every person who walked through her doors. It took me 3 months to work up the courage to ask her out, and another 6 months before she trusted me enough to tell me her full story. When she did, I understood why she had walls around her heart, and I was determined to show her that not everyone would let her down. 10 years after Camilla left that house in Ohio, her phone rang with a number she did not recognize. She almost did not answer. Something told her to pick up. "Camilla." The voice on the other end was older, more tired, but unmistakable. It was Sandra. "Richard passed away 6 months ago," Sandra said, her voice cracking with what might have been grief or might have been exhaustion. "His liver finally gave out. We have been struggling ever since. Derek cannot find a job. Brittany's marriage fell apart and she has 2 little ones to feed now. We are family, Camilla, and I know we had our differences, but I need your help." Camilla was silent for a long moment. "What exactly do you want?" she finally asked. Sandra's answer made her laugh out loud. "I want you to give Derek and Brittany jobs at your restaurant, management positions with good salaries, and maybe you could invest in Derek's business idea. He has been trying to get a startup off the ground, but he just needs some capital to—" "Let me stop you right there," Camilla said, her voice calm and steady. "You want me to give management jobs to 2 people who have never worked a day in their lives. You want me to fund a business for the boy who used to leave his dirty dishes in my basement room just to make more work for me, and you think I owe you this because we are family." Richard wanted nothing to do with me," Camilla interrupted. "He refused to feed me. He stole my inheritance. He laughed when your daughter pushed me down in front of everyone at her birthday party. And you, Sandra, you made me your servant. You put me in a basement. You called me clumsy and useless every single day. And now, because you are finally facing consequences for your own choices, you have the audacity to call me and ask for favors, family. You made it very clear I was never part of your family. I owe you nothing. Do not ever contact me again." She hung up the phone and blocked the number, and then she turned to me, and for the first time since I had known her, she smiled a smile completely free of pain. "It is over," she said. "It is really finally over." The journey to healing was not straightforward. Even after cutting ties with her father's family, Camila carried wounds that would take years to fully address. She started seeing a therapist, something she had resisted for a long time, because asking for help still felt like weakness. Slowly, session by session, she learned to separate her worth from the treatment she had received. She learned that her father's cruelty said everything about him and nothing about her. She learned that she was allowed to be angry, to grieve, and eventually to let go. She never forgave Richard or Sandra. She told me once that forgiveness was not something she owed them, but she did release the hatred she had carried for so long, not for their sake, but for her own. Holding on to that anger was like drinking poison and waiting for them to get sick, she explained. I had to put it down so I could finally be free. Today, Camilla and I have been married for 5 years. We have 2 beautiful children who have never met their grandfather and never will. Linda's Kitchen now has 5 locations across 3 states, and Camila has started a foundation that provides free cooking classes to children from difficult home situations. She volunteers there herself, teaching kids the same lessons her mother taught her all those years ago. That cooking is love made visible, that feeding yourself is the first step to taking care of yourself, that no matter how dark things get, there is always a way forward. I watch her sometimes standing at the front of a classroom full of kids who remind me so much of who she used to be. Kids with worn shoes and too thin frames and shadows behind their eyes. And I see how she lights up when one of them gets a recipe right for the first time, how she praises them and encourages them and makes them feel like they matter. Because she knows what it feels like to be forgotten, and she is determined to make sure these kids never feel that way. The lesson I have learned from Camila's story is simple but profound. The people who are supposed to protect you sometimes become the ones who hurt you the most. Parents, partners, friends, they can fail you in ways that leave scars you carry forever. But here is the truth that took Camila years to understand. Their failure does not define your future. You do. You get to choose who you become. You get to decide whether the pain of your past will break you or build you. Camila chose to build. She took every rejection, every cruelty, every moment of being made to feel worthless, and she transformed it into fuel for her dreams. She did not wait for someone to rescue her. She rescued herself. And now she spends her life rescuing others. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had someone in your life who was supposed to take care of you but let you down? How did you find the strength to keep going? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if Camila's journey touched your heart the way it touches mine every single day, please take a moment to hit that like button and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already so you never miss another story of resilience and hope. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for listening. And remember, no matter what you are going through right now, you have the power to write your own story. May your kitchen always be warm, your heart always be open, and your future always be bright. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one.